Hi there, this is Peggy Arvidsson, Soul Coach and Hand Analyst. I am here today to share another episode of Palmistry with Peggy. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the lines in the hands, because that's what most people think of when they think of palmistry, right? That's what you think of, is all these lines. Now, you can see my lines fairly well, or you can see my three major lines. The major lines are here. We have our heart line, starts under our pinky and it moves up. Could move up to the base of the Jupiter first finger, the base of the Saturn finger, the middle finger, or it could stop somewhere in the middle palm here. What's the next line that you can see? Fairly well. Let's see if I can get the light in on this. Someday I'm going to be famous and have a big fancy film crew, and they're going to make sure all my lighting is great. But in the meantime, let me tell you, this is my headline. This one. And mine goes down, stops around here. Okay? It's fairly deep, about halfway through. I'm a quick thinker. I like to process things quickly, although I do have these nice little tentacles that can follow any idea or thought down the rabbit hole, usually when I'm trying to procrastinate. And this line that comes wrapping around the base of the thumb starts here, usually starts connected to the headline, mine's not quite connected, is my lifeline. Okay, these are the three major lines. Almost everybody has all those. I say almost everybody because there is something called a simian crease, which is when the headline and the heart line are connected. So you would only see one line and it generally would go straight across the palm of the hand. So those are the three main lines. Now, contrary to popular belief, the lifeline doesn't tell me how long you're going to live. It shows me how grounded you are, how physically aware you are, how you are sitting in your body, and how comfortable you are in this life. You know, being you, being in your body. And of course, I'm kind of doing the top line here because I try and keep these little episodes short so that you can get some information without getting into overwhelm. So whenever I say rules in palmistry, you know, every single rule, there's a counter to it, right? That's the rule except for, because we're all human and we can follow some basic rules, but we all move and integrate things and learn things in our own way, and hands are the same reflection of who we are. But our lifeline does not tell us how long we're going to live. You have free will. You get to make choices every single day. So you may go through a phase where your lifeline is looking a little weak, or it's not showing up so well. Doesn't mean that anything terrible is going to happen, but maybe, you know, you need to look at your diet or see, are you exercising enough, or are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? All of that stuff can come into play with our lifeline. The headline shows us how we think, how we like to solve problems, how we like to process information and come to conclusions about issues or work or things like that. It doesn't tell us if we're smart or if we're dumb. It's not the point. It's how we process, how we use that big old computer that we have inside our head, okay? And then our heart line shows us how we love and how we want to be loved. This is so important. This is where almost every issue in every relationship can start out getting so confused, because you love a certain way, and so therefore that's the way you believe love should be demonstrated, whether it's with your kids or with your partner or your best friend. And guess what? They have a completely different heart line than you. There's a lot of variations. There are 4 main types of heart lines. And I'll talk about that in another episode. But for right now, what I want you to recognize is knowing how you are. What's your type? What's your dominant line? How do they play out in your life on a regular basis? While they can change, it doesn't change overnight. You know, it's not just simply thinking, oh, I want to be a different kind of person, and the lines change and you change, right? It happens slowly. And there's nothing wrong with being your type. There's no need to change. The point is just know who you are and know why you want things a certain way, and recognize that it's showing up there in your hands. And once you have that validation, you can move forward. And be very honest and open in your relationships. I think this is a big thing to do with your heart line, is to know what your type is and to really understand and dig deeper. Dig deeper. You know, it's one thing to say, yeah, well, I like my own time. I like to decompress. Why is she such a pain in the neck? Why is she always chasing me around the house asking me how I feel? Well, that's your type. Your type might be the strong and silent heart. You like to kind of come home and go into your cave, and you like to demonstrate your love by presenting things usually that you've made yourself, little presents, as opposed to spending time. You know, time is not necessarily your gauge for demonstrating your love, but chances are good that you've got somebody who has this nurturer heart line that I call the nurturer, and they want to know how you are, and the way that they love and want to be loved is by spending time, really having deep conversations and connecting and physically being near you. So if you've got these two types of people together, there's nothing wrong with it if you can both observe and understand each other's core type. So what that means is strong and silent, you've got to tell your nurturer, hey, look, it doesn't mean that I don't love you and I don't care about you when I come home and I want to decompress. It's just that I have to be on all day and I need about, you know, a half an hour just to do my own stuff. And nurturer, you need to be able to say, hey, I get it. Thank you for sharing that with me, because, you know, you wanted sharing. They've shared their truth with you. And instead of condemning them for it, or saying, well, why can't you be this way, or why can't you rest when you're sleeping, or things like that, say, hey, I'm thrilled that you shared that with me. And I understand, but you also have to understand that I do value our time together. So maybe we can come to an agreement, you know, after you decompress for a half an hour, let's have 15 minutes of just you and me time. That's a great way to handle it. I mean, it's not the only way, but once you know your type and you're willing to talk about it and you're willing to own it up front, then that is something that you can use to benefit you in all of your relationships, whether they're at work or whether they're at play or whether they're at home, okay? So these are the three main lines in the hands: our heart line, our head line, and our lifeline, going from top to bottom. And I want you to also take a look that some hands have lots and lots of lines. If they held their hand up right here, we'd see lots of them jumping off the hand. And some people have, you know, three main ones that we can see at a distance. And some, you might not even be able to see all three of these in a setting like this, right, just across the video. So look at all the lines in people's hands in relationship to all the other stuff in the hands. If there's a lot of lines, but there's one line that really stands out, that's a line that's begging to be talked about. So a good hand analyst might go there and say, well, okay, you're right. You have, you know, hundreds of lines, and they're crisscrossing, and they're sharp, and they're moving fast across the hands, but this one really stands out. This one's really dark, or this one's really deep. So let's talk about that one. Vice versa, you could have a hand where the lines are very wispy. You know, it almost looks like a clean slate. You have to move in real close with a magnifying glass to take a look. And so a hand analyst might say, which of these is the strongest? Which of these is the longest? Which of these is the one that's really stepping out into the crowd? You know, you could have all these wispy lines, but maybe a really long, deep headline. We're probably going to talk about how our head leads everything else. We seem to be very watery, but we love being able to think and solve problems. Okay, you got the three main lines, and the hand's pretty meaty like mine. You've got a pretty good earthy hand. You know, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to look at the secondary lines, because there are secondary lines there, and when they are, we'll see. Do any of them interact, and how do they interact with the main lines? So you have to take all of the lines into consideration of the hand, you know, and of the person you're looking at as a whole, because one headline can look like another headline, but they're on a completely different, you know, hand, which of course makes sense because they belong to a completely different person. So take all the lines in connection with one another. If that makes sense. Thanks for watching another episode of Palmistry with Peggy. My name is Peggie Arvidsson. You can reach me at handanalystpro@comcast.net. You can visit my blog and leave a comment at awakenyoursoul.wordpress.com. And of course, I love your comments and your feedback here on YouTube. Thanks.